I'm getting a lot of coffee for this review. Hi guys, I'm Gesha. Welcome to the channel and welcome as always to our coffee times. And just when I came back from my holidays, I went to spend like maybe 10 days with my parents in Spain because I had not seen them for a long time. I came back and the next day I decided to go to the movies. I was still really excited. I was still being really naive, but I just really wanted to give this movie a chance. And I'm talking, of course, about Firestarter.
It's coffee time!
So since the rumors emerged that they were going to make a new Firestarter movie, I was kind of excited because I always loved the story of Charlie and how she is not a superhero or a villain. She's just somebody that ended up with some powers that she couldn't control, that she didn't ask for, and it was more of a curse for her and for her family. So I was really excited to see where they could potentially take this movie in 2022. Now, they didn't take it to a good place, let me tell you that, but nevertheless, I am here to talk to you about Firestarter, spoiler free as always, even though you guys are probably familiar with the story. So Firestarter is obviously a horror, science fiction, kind of thriller book from Stephen King, and it was one of his early works. The novel was released in September 1980, and there was already an adaptation on 1984 that we are all familiar with, I believe, because, you know, it had a really strong cast, and Charlie is played by Drew Barrymore. Then we got a TV sequel in 2002 called Firestarter Rekindled, which didn't do so well. And then we finally got, you know, the news that Blumhouse was going to take Firestarter and do kind of a reboot. They kind of consider this a reboot of the movie instead of the book. But they also did change a lot of things from the 1984 first movie adaptation. A couple desperately tries to hide their daughter Charlie from a shadowy federal agency that wants to harness her unprecedented gift for turning fire into a weapon of mass destruction. Her father has taught her to suppress that power, to keep it under control, to keep it a secret, but as she is getting older, it is harder for Charlie to control it because she has this power of pyrokinesis. This Firestarter opens with Charlie going to school instead of, you know, the 1984's adaptation where we already see Charlie on the run from the get-go, so we don't really get to see her trying to have a normal life. In this case, we have a little bit of an older Charlie that goes to school and is struggling to be a normal kid and trying to suppress her powers that she truly doesn't really understand. The parents never really explained her where it comes from or any of the dangers that come with it. So we see her more of a struggling young little girl. Now, this movie is a movie that is really dependent on the characters. There is a dependency there because it is, as well as it was in the book, a story about a really strong girl and her father in their relationship and trying to survive when this organization is coming after them. And that bond, that strength, those like really important characters were not really there on the screen in this new adaptation. So I feel like these where the movie mostly went wrong. This is one of my biggest issues with the movie, that is the characters. The characters felt so detached to each other that I never truly bought that they were a family. Zac Efron plays the father, then we have the mother that gets a little bit more of background in this movie because we didn't really get to see her in the previous adaptation. And you also have Charlie. They are the family that is trying to stick together, trying to kind of hide from this evil organization that is coming after them. And honestly, they were just not working for me as a family. They didn't feel like they had a bond. They didn't feel like they were related. They didn't have any kind of connection. They just felt like actors. And that was a big issue for me, obviously. When it comes to Charlie, I really wanted to have a connection with her because she is the one that you're supposed to root for. She's the one that you're supposed to, feel for and want her to succeed and control her powers and escape this organization. But again, I was just not really connecting with her, which is a big problem in this kind of movie. And you know, the family was not even the worst part of the characters. For me, it was the people playing the antagonists. They were almost laughable. There is this woman who is in charge of the organization coming after Charlie and her parents. Now, in the books and in the first movie, they're called The Shop. And I don't know why they decided to change the name in this movie, which made it a little bit kind of, I don't know, unnecessary. And I just didn't really like it that they changed it for the DSI. It's kind of like a secret organization in America. Like, no thank you. The Shop just sounds way cooler. But I mean, that's just me being picky, okay? The name doesn't really matter. However, this woman that is supposed to be like super evil villain antagonist coming for them, she's the one they're running from. Her speeches, her lines, the way it was delivered, it was just so awkward and laughable. Like, I wanted to cry because it's not supposed to be funny. If this was like an 80s cheese campy movie, yeah, bring on all of that, but it was not. So I had a really hard time buying this movie, buying the villains, in basically anything. I mean, the script was so over the top that it's not all on the actors here. I mean, it was just a problem with the script as well. We'll get to that later. Kurtwood Smith was cast in this movie to play the role of the scientist that performed the experiments with this new drug that they were developing, and where basically Charlie's parents got their powers from. So, you know, when he had one scene in the movie, I thought it would be interesting to see the guy that actually is responsible for everything, and I wanted to know more about these labs and about this drug, and you know, that was going supposedly to be interesting. But the conversation he has with this other character is just so awkward, and it's just so forced and so acted. I was suffering there. I just wanted that scene to end because it was a pain for me. Michael Gregorius was one of my favorite things of this movie. I have to give it to him. I did enjoy him as a character, even though again I feel like the script did him wrong here, and the first time we get introduced to his character, he has a really awkward phone conversation, and like I said, just the lines, the script, the dialogue, it's just so awkward for a reason, and it's just not flowing like regular conversations. It's just like lines are cliche after cliche, and it's just awkward. However, I have to praise him for being the best part of this movie when it comes to the characters, and also another point for Firestarter 2022 for casting him for the role of Rainbird, because this time around he, that is a Cherokee character, is actually played by a native actor rather than George C. Scott in brownface on the first adaptation from 1984. Keith Thomas might have directed this movie, you know, he is accredited as the director of this film, but I don't think he had anything to say when it comes to the script, and that shows because his other movie, The Vigil, was a very decent movie that I really enjoyed. In general, this movie was, I believe it had a running time around 95 minutes, and it could have benefited from being maybe a mini series or just a longer movie, because I don't think they even really had time to get the viewer, you know, connected to Charlie and see her learning her skills and controlling her power. Like, all of those scenes and moments were so rushed because we obviously need to get to the third act and the final ending. And I feel like, you know, sometimes horror movies or thrillers benefit from 90 minutes and others need a little bit of that extra time. Probably some of the lines that I actually did enjoy were the ones that they took from the 1984 movie, kind of trying to play tribute to it, but there were many things on the script that were just a joke to me. I just don't know what they were really going for when it comes to the tone of the movie. There is something that really bothered me in the film. It's not really a spoiler, so I'm gonna be really generic about what happens. Basically, the villains, you know, the antagonists have ways of protecting themselves from people with powers like Charlie and her parents. And I feel like the way they brought it up, it was fine, but the way they keep utilizing that, it was getting on my nerves. And I don't know, it's one of those things that I feel like they assume that I'm stupid and I need to be reminded of certain things over and over again with the same cool things, and it just bothered me. Okay, I'm being a little bit vague about it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but if you know, you know. As I mentioned, the other director's movie, The Vigil, was just so different. So I guess because I watched The Vigil and really enjoyed it and really surprised me, and I was not expecting such a movie, it was kind of unique. It was different. It had such an unsettling, moody tone. It was really unsettling for me. It made me uncomfortable at times, and I really enjoyed that film. So when I heard that he was gonna direct a new Firestarter, I think that's part of why I was excited, because I was like, oh, this guy, you know, has done The Vigil and I really enjoyed that one. So, you know, maybe he's gonna give this movie a moody, unsettling, like really great horror tone and it's gonna be amazing. But no. And for me, again, I think the script and the characters where this movie really went wrong. One of the best things of the movie was the tense electronic score that was done by Daniel Davies, Cody Carpenter, and his father, John Carpenter. The moment you hear certain parts of the movie, of the score in the movie, you know it's John Carpenter. It's like, you know. And it brought kind of an 80s flavor to the movie, which might be more fitting or not, because this takes place in modern time, and you know, you can criticize that maybe the score didn't match the movie at times, but for me it actually helped the movie. There were moments where I feel like the music really brought it home for me and it rescued certain scenes if they could be rescued. So I was really grateful for that. And yeah, the score was great. Like, I really loved it. Another thing that I did enjoy, another positive thing, is I did like how they tried to show different ways that Charlie's power works. You know, we see her struggling to control her powers, but we see the effects of heat in water, in certain objects and certain people. Like, they are trying to mix it up a little bit, and I did enjoy that. You could see when she was getting angry that certain rooms or people were getting hot, and there was this kind of like almost like a sound wave but with heat, like these heat waves effects, and I really did enjoy that, as well as some more gory moments. So let's go talk about the horror now. This movie didn't feel much of a horror movie to me. It felt more like a you know, thriller with some splashes of horror and sci-fi, because, you know, experiments and powers and stuff like that. But even though this movie doesn't have horror in the sense of, you know, jump scares or really spooky, unsettling moments, what we have here is a little bit of cool special effects, and especially when it comes to burns in people or people that get hurt, and you actually get to see the aftermath of that burns. It's not like in the first movie where you didn't really get to see, you know, the wounds or churned people or things like that. So I was a fan of that. I thought they did a really good job, and again, there was kind of a progression in a mix of different type of things, so it didn't feel like it was boring. I also enjoyed something that they did for the opening credits, which is basically they run this kind of found footage of the parents, Charlie's parents, as they're being interviewed to participate in the experiment at college, where they would then get their powers from this drug that they are testing. I did enjoy that. It was a nice, cute way, you know, to create an kind of a creepy atmosphere, and at the same time giving the viewer a kind of a backstory on their parents. I mean, if you're familiar with the story, you already know what happened to them, but for people that are watching or discovering the story of Charlie for the first time, at least they get a little bit of a background of what happened to her parents and why she was born with powers. Now let's talk about my final thoughts on the rating. So I decided to give this movie a 2 out of 5. So I was really considering giving it a 1.5, but then I remembered all the other bad movies that I've seen. And I also came to the conclusion that I actually enjoyed this one more than Pet Sematary remake, so I decided to bump it up to 2. I didn't hate this movie, let me put that clear out there. I feel like it's gonna be a nice, maybe guilty pleasure watch here and there, but is it a good movie? No, it's not. I was kind of scared to get to the ending because I thought it was gonna be horrible, and it was not as bad as I expected. Actually, I did enjoy all the different locations and all the things that they did towards the end, even though the problem with the ending that I had is that it didn't really give me the closure that I needed, I guess. But towards the end there is also a lot less dialogue, which I think it helped for me to really enjoy those last scenes in those great locations. The problem also with this movie is that there were no surprises. In the 1984 movie, they do basically start with Charlie and Andy on the run, and then they tell you what happened to them through flashbacks. In this case, in the 2022 one, we just have a linear movie where events happen basically just one after the other, and you don't really get then many twists and turns because it's just a linear, you know, storytelling. The movie felt at times like they were unsure of where they wanted to go with the film. I felt like at some point maybe they kind of wanted this to be a little bit of a superhero movie, which is not, like a superhero origin story, which is not. Charlie is not a superhero. This should not be treated like a superhero movie. And all of that cliche lines about, oh, don't use their power to hurt people, and you know, you need to control your power. And they were really annoying me with that as well, which again, script, like the lines, like it was really, you know, annoying me. So obviously, sadly, you guys, I cannot recommend you or strongly recommend you to go to the cinema to watch it. If you want to skip it in the theater, it's perfectly fine. The room was almost empty, which I did not expect at all because I thought there was going to be a bigger release. I believe in some countries this is also available on Peacock. I don't think we have that here. I've never used it. But if you have the chance to stream it over there, then do so. If you love Stephen King, you know, go to the theater, of course, watch it. That's what I did. But keep in mind that this is not going to be a good movie, so maybe, you know, you go now with a little bit of lower expectations. Alright guys, I hope that you enjoyed this spoiler-free review. Please let me know down below if you watched the movie, if you enjoyed it, or if you love the 1984 better. Let's talk about it in the comments down below. Also, before I forget, I would like to, if I have the time, to make a video comparing the book and the 2 movies. I might upload that one on my other channel, but if I do end up uploading that video, I will definitely let you guys know through my Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, make sure to follow me there. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for all your support, and I hope to see you all, as always, in our next coffee time. Bye.